Okay, we saw about, sorry about lots of discontinuities. So we call ourselves semi-continuous disorder. So we looked at what is continuous. That was the first thing that we looked at. I'm going to write this definition because I'm going to start off on discussions today. Okay, so let us, without loss of generality, take R to R is said to be continuous. At a point, let's say it's at R, if I'm going to analyze this definition for every epsilon, there is a delta greater than 0 such that mod x minus I less than delta implies mod fx minus xi. This is the definition of continuity. And if f is continuous at every point, we say it is continuous R. Okay? If f is continuous at every xi, we say f is continuous on R. Okay. I looked at that. We looked at the discontinuities. We said that if f is a map from R to R and df in all those points in R where f is not continuous, then this is what we saw last lecture, that df also has some structure. It cannot be any arbitrary set. Df must be an F sigma set. F sigma means union of, countable union of closed sets. And conversely, given any F sigma set A, we can construct a function f mapping R to R such that the discontinuity set is precisely this. So basically, F sigma sets capture discontinuity. Completely all discontinuities are captured by this. So in other words, discontinuity sets are synonymous with F sigma. And these are some things that we noted. And we also made a remark that every F sigma set is either a first category set or contains an epsilon. This is one observation we made. If it is not first category, what happens? Okay, these are some of the things that we observed. So we know something about continuity, something about discontinuity. Now we want to look at the definition of continuity in various ways. Now let us look at first the definition of continuity. What does this say? So now let's look at continuity at z. So we have this definition. So what do we get by star? X belongs to this interval xi minus delta to xi plus delta implies fx minus fxi is less than epsilon. This mod x minus xi is less than delta means xi, the distance between xi and x is at most delta. So it can go all the way up to xi plus delta or up to xi minus delta on either side. Whenever x is in this interval, so here is xi. Here is xi plus delta. So we are look at neighboring points of xi on either side. Now whichever way I look, I want this error to be small. It may so happen that the error is small if you look at one side but not on the other side. So we split this into two parts. This means x belongs to xi minus delta to xi implies fx minus fxi is less than epsilon, and x belongs to xi plus delta this can be split into two statements, whether x belongs to this part or x belongs to that part. When x is equal to xi, there is nothing, it's 0. Now it means we split this. Suppose only this happens, this may or may not happen, we know only this happens, then we say f is continuous from the left. Only this happens, we say continuous from the right. So let's call this as 1. If only if one happens, we say f is continuous at xi from the left or left continuous. If 2 happens, we say f is continuous at xi from the right. So continuity means both continuity from the left as well as the right. So 1 and 2 both happen means both left and right. So continuous at xi continuous from left as well as so therefore on one side it will be nice, on the other side there may be discontinuity, or this side may be nice, that side is discontinuity. Well, you have continuity only if you have from both sides. Now I wrote this because now I am going to do something different. Now I am going to look at, instead of splitting this, split this. So let's look at again continuity at xi in a different. Okay, look at continuity as follows. Look at continuity at xi as follows. Again star says mod x minus xi less than delta implies mod fx minus fxi is less than epsilon. Now what that one says is that fx and fxi are close enough. Fx and fxi are within a distance of epsilon of each other. So or we can write it as fx belongs to fx minus epsilon to fx, fxi minus epsilon to fxi plus epsilon. What does that mean? f psi minus epsilon must be less than fx less than f psi plus epsilon. Now therefore what we can say is mod x minus psi is less than delta implies one. Let me see which is the correct definition. F psi is less than fx plus epsilon, that is this part, and f psi is greater than fx minus epsilon, that is this part. Both must. Now if one of them happens, we say semi-continuous. That's all. So now we have a definition. If one of them happens, we have a notion of Of course, we can split that also. This also, how many you will get? 4. Your left side semi-continuous, right side semi-continuous, etc. That would will only split this. Okay, first, if this happens, fx is said to be lower semi-continuous in most of the optimization problems. You will find that this lower semi-continuity arguments are the ones that come into the picture in eventually extracting the existence of an optimal value. Lower semi-continuous at psi, if I am going to write that for every epsilon positive, there exists a delta positive such that mod x minus psi is less than delta, implies the first one. F psi is less than fx plus epsilon. The other one is upper semi-continuous. Upper semi-continuous, there is a lim sup, lim min definitions for this. I am trying to avoid it by going straight to what it means. That finally can be written in this form. Upper semi-continuous at psi, if mod x minus psi is less than delta, implies f psi is greater than x minus epsilon. It was a nice article long back, almost 60 years ago, 1942, in the American Mathematical Monthly, about the semi-continuous functions and their role in keeping in mind applications. But I think subsequently, this idea of semi-continuity and its application optimization has multifold increased. Okay? So even to read that article, 1942 article, at least the basics are there. Of course, you find a slight difference in my, most people put these things in a more compact, lim sup, lim min form, but I prefer this because this tells how it came. By splitting this definition into these parts. All of them are equivalent. So we have these notions of lower and upper semi-continuous. We will give examples. And what we observe is therefore a function is continuous at psi if and only if it is both lower semi-continuous and upper semi-continuous. See, you will see already we can split continuity into 4 things happening. From the left, from the right, lower and upper. 4 things all must be happened. So sometimes we see even if one of them gives us some hope, all of them may not happen, one of them happens, hang on to that, that's a nice part, and see whether you can get some results. Let's see what, so finally what led to this notion, okay, if this side is okay, I'll hang on to the lower semi-continuity and make some arguments. Therefore, a function is continuous. So therefore, a function f mapping R to R is continuous at psi belonging to R if and only if f is, from now on I will write lower semi-continuous LSC add USC. Both LSC and USC. Let me give you some examples, one or two simple examples. Let's take any interval, open interval AB. Rectangular wave. Take the characteristic function of this interval. Let f of x defined as what's the exact all these fellows be defined as f of x equal to 1, f belong to this interval, open interval AB, and 0 if x less than 1. This is called the characteristic function, indicator function, or whatever name you want to give of that interval. Now what can you say about this function? Well, if you plot that, here's AB, it is all 0 here, it is all 0 here, and it is 1 there. This open circle means that this point, the value is here, the thick dot line means the value is there. Where are the only points? Clearly, if at all there is a discontinuity, it is going to be at 0 and 1. So the only points of discontinuity are x equal to a and x equal to b. All other points, it is continuous and therefore LSC as well as this. Okay, what can you say about the point A?
It is left continuous.
It is okay. Let's look at the point x is equal to a. One thing is it is what? Left continuous or right continuous?
Right.
What is the value at a? The value at a is 0. When you come from this side, it's still 0. But when you come, so it's certainly right continuous. And at x equal to b,
Left continuous.
it is left continuous. Sorry. At x equal to b, it is right continuous. That's okay. Now, what can you say about semi-continuous? Is it semi-continuous at that point? Is it lower semi-continuous at A? Is it upper semi-continuous at A? What can you say? What is your claim?
A is upper semi-continuous.
At x equal to A, it is, your claim is USC. At B, let's look at x equal to A. Why is it upper semi-continuous? What is the definition of upper semi-continuous? Your f psi must be greater than fx minus epsilon. Xi is this point. F xi is this. What is F xi? 0. So F xi, and if we take any other point in the neighborhood, if you want upper semi-continuity, you must subtract epsilon from that point. So in other words, you will bring down the curve to a little epsilon, and the value at that point must be greater than this. Does it happen? It does not happen.
No, it's
Yes.
below 0, right? Just below 0, not below the upper one.
Pardon me? For every point in the neighborhood, we are bringing down the curve by epsilon. For every x in mod x minus I less than delta means what? Every point in the neighborhood of that, we are bringing down the curve by epsilon. Is it not true? Fx minus epsilon. That neighborhood points are bringing down the curve by epsilon.
If you look at fx,
Yeah.
then what is it saying? Saying that fx is less than fxi plus epsilon.
Yes.
So then it must be.
So the picture, what happens? You want in the neighborhood, if you slightly bring, what is fx minus epsilon mean? You are simply linearly translating the curve down by epsilon. So in the neighborhood, if you linearly translate the curve down by epsilon, and fx must stay above that value at that point, must stay above that curve. Does it happen? Does it happen or not?
No, it
Does not happen. But if you want lower semi-continuity, what should you do? You move the curve above by epsilon, and you want the value to stay less than that. Does it stay?
Yeah, yes.
So therefore, do you see that it is lower semi-continuous at x equal to a? Yes?
Yes.
Clearly by geometrically you see that. What you do is keep that point, and the remaining points you just stretch the curve by epsilon on either side and see whether this point lies below. Don't touch this point. The value at this point you don't touch. If you move the curve in the neighborhood by epsilon, then this value lies below that. For any point in that neighborhood, f xi, xi is a now, f xi is less than fx plus epsilon. Do you see that? Fx plus epsilon is at least epsilon in that neighborhood. And f xi is 0. So certainly 0 is less than epsilon in that neighborhood. If we choose, there is always this possibility. So therefore it is lower semi-continuous at the point A. What about point B?
Seems safe.
Same. So therefore it is lower semi-continuous and x equal to B, it is lower.
Sir, if you take a continuous function, then let's say, let's take any point between A and B, then using this argument,
Take any point A and B.
between A and B.
Yeah.
Okay, so how will you see that it is both upper and lower semi-continuous?
You show me. Okay. I will leave it to you to prove. She is almost staring at your face. Okay. If you bring the car down, it lies above. If you bring the car above, it lies below. That's it. No problem there at all. So, if we take therefore the characteristic function of an open set or open interval, it is lower semi-continuous at all points. It is continuous in fact at all points except 2, but it is lower semi-continuous at the points of discontinuity. Okay. Now, I change this problem slightly. Suppose I take fx to be 1 if x belongs to closed interval 0, that's the Now again, the points of discontinuity are 0 and 1. So discontinuity set is D. Not 0 here, A. So therefore it is continuous at all points except A and B. Therefore LSC and USC at all points except A and B. Now what about at x equal to A now?
Upper than.
Now if you look at the picture, here is A, here is B. Now this is 1 and this is 0. Right? Now if in the neighborhood I bring the curve down by epsilon, that fellow stays above and therefore it is upper semiconductor. Same way the other one also. So F at x equal to A and B, F is upper semiconductor. Therefore F is USC. So you see that the characteristic function of an open interval is LSC, but the characteristic function of a closed interval is USC. Upper semiconductors. Now in general, if you have a metric space and if you have a function on metric space with a real line, and if you have the characteristic function of an open set, it will always be LSC, and if you take the characteristic function of a closed set, it will always be USC. Okay. So in general, I'll just write that. In general, the characteristic function is much more. You have to very carefully argue about the open set. Characteristic function of an open set is LSC and a closed set is USC. This generalization of it. It's very easily seen for one trivial example like this. But basically these are the building blocks. From this you can manipulate and get hold of all the others. Okay. That was the first example. The first example is the example of these indicator functions, which are of great importance for us in many analysis problems. The next example.
Sir, first of all, isn't left and right continuity somewhat coupled to semi-continuity?
See, the left continuity looks at the neighborhood. The semi-continuity looks at the graph. See, the left continuity is obtained by looking at the neighborhood of the point, splitting and manipulating what is happening. This side something nice is happening, that side is not happening. Now for semi-continuity, look at the other side, the range part of it. Okay? So the semi-continuity analyzes what happens to the wiggling of the curve in the neighborhood of the point. Okay? Continuity, left and right continuity looks at what is happening to the function in the right side as well as the left side of that point. The right side of the point and the left side of the point. Now we are looking at on the right side of the value and the left side of the value. That is semi-continuity. So there are two things in the function, namely the domain and the codomain, or the range of the function. When you look at the left and right of this point and the domain, we get the notion of left continuity and right continuity. Here you are looking at, after the mapping has been done, go there and see what is happening, and that is semi-continuity. Now I remember reading a book long back, I don't know. It was a book, but I'm trying to recollect the author. Okay. I know, it's called Topics in Analysis. Such books are very interesting because you will always find something that's not discussed in any standard textbooks. That's why people write like this. If you want to write a standard textbook, you have to go with all your notation, very good definition, correctly. When you write a we assume that the reader is familiar with the notion of continuity, and then take only that point which we want to discuss. So in that book, every chapter he starts with a quote or a statement, and there is a chapter on divergent series, and the quote he says is, "This series is divergent, very good, I can do something interesting with it," which means there is nothing interesting with convergent series. It's a boring, dull thing. So similarly, continuity is a boring, dull thing. The real challenge, interesting thing comes from discontinuity, and that's why all this analysis, how bad it could be discontinuous, can I make any arbitrary discontinuity, even in discontinuity can I find some order, all these things all started. Okay. This idea of semi-continuity was introduced roughly about 100 years ago, 1900, when the first time it started appearing. Okay, now next example. So people may say this function is not continuous. Thank God we can do something interesting with it. If it is continuous, it's a boring done. Because everything has been done. We want to do anything with continuous functions. The theorem must be a very hard theorem that has been left unproved by somebody. Everybody has given up, and so you have to prove it. But whereas the discontinuity, there are a lot of things still that you can look at. Now let's look at this function f of x equal to 1 over x. Again, f mapping R to R. Doesn't matter. For x not equal to 0. And 0 for x equal to 0. Okay? The function, because that formula 1 over x is not defined when x equal to 0. So we take it the value as 1 over x at all the points where x is not 0, and at the point x we make it as 0. If you look at that function, certainly the only point of discontinuity is discontinuity is x equal to 0. Now discontinuous, the next question comes, is it lower, upper, anything at all? And is it LSC at x equal to 0 or USC at x equal to 0 or none? Neither USC nor LSC. So the discontinuity can be because it is not USC but LSC, or LSC but not USC, but neither LSC nor USC. Now let's look at that point. X equal to 0, it is 0. What can you say about this?
It's not left continuous right
Neither LSC.
Neither left continuous nor, it's very clear. Whether you lower it or go it upward, this fellow goes so way down. Always this fellow hangs in between. There is no way it follows. So clearly, this is what it means. Draw a picture and say clearly. Clearly. It is neither LSC nor USC. So we have all kinds of things. We can have only USC, only LSC, both or none. So this is an example of where none of these things be. Okay, I'll give an exercise. If you just look at it, it's not easy, but it's not difficult. Let's take example 3. We already seen this example. Take in another context. Take x to be a countably infinite set. Okay? In R. Okay. We take a countably infinite number of points in R. Then define f mapping R to R as f of x is equal to 0 if x does not belong to x. At all points which are outside this interval, other than discrete set of points, I define it to be 0 and equal to 1 over n if x equal to n. When you are in that, the nth point I get 1 over n as the value. Okay. Now we have seen that this function is discontinuous precisely at the set of points at x. So df, this has been done, we have seen it before. And therefore, f is LSC and USC at all points other than x. Is continuous and therefore LSC and USC at all points other than x. Now we want to, my claim is, what about the points? At the points AJ, fx is US. At the point. Another question. These are all questions, okay? So, second question. 3, 4. If F mapping R to R is LSC, what about bracket USC? What about minus F? Is it USC or fine? FG LSC, question, does it imply F plus G LSC? F LSC, question, does it imply alpha times F LSC? Alpha constant. I'm just asking this question, you see whether it is true. Well, under this condition it is true, otherwise it will not be true, whatever it is you want to say. And this is so that we can make a vector space structure for them and so on and so forth. These are the things that you have to investigate. Okay. Some more things about LSC and USC. Proving all of them will take a lot of time. So I will ask questions and say what sort of answers do you get. So now let's take a function. If you recall, I wrote in the beginning that df must be this is true for any f. Whatever function from R to R you take, the set of points of discontinuity must be an F sigma set. And we also observed that F sigma set is either first category or contains an entry. Okay. So now if I have a continuous function, df is what? Empty. There is nothing there. But now, suppose I have discontinuous function which is lower semi-continuous. Suppose I have a discontinuous function, but it is not continuous, but I know it is lower semi-continuous at all points. Then what can you say about df? Now, if f is continuous, then df will be empty. So there is nothing great. That is that thing does not contain an interval. It is first category. Okay. Second, if f is not continuous but lower semi-continuous, well, still df must be f sigma. Now, in the f sigma, is it of this type or this type? It turns out it has to be of this type. Then df must be not only f sigma but also a first category set. Now, this is true whether in a lower or upper. Okay? Semi-continuous. then df must be f sigma. And not only that. So now, here we said, give me any f sigma, I will construct an f such that df is precisely that set. Exactly here. Give me any f sigma set which is first category, you can construct a semi-continuous function for which df is that. Okay. Also, given any first category f sigma set A, there exists a function f mapping R to R which is semi-continuous, which you want lower you can make it lower, if you want upper you can make it upper, which is semi-continuous and all points the same time. It is all points it is lower semi-continuous, at all points it is upper semi-continuous. Okay, let me write it. That is lower, upper, both you can make, upper semi-continuous and df is precisely this. These are some of the most good classical theorems in analysis. It's really analyzing discontinuity. There are much more. There are lots of functions that are semi-continuous functions that are associated with a given function. The handle for that function, original function, is attained by analyzing the semi-continuous functions. And that has had a lot of even in the great proof of Carlson in the 60s, the final theorem on almost everywhere convergence of Fourier series, we use all these ideas of Saltus and other things to come up with this. These are all very, very nicely, finely analyzing continuity and discontinuity. Okay. So that's the parallel to the continuous functions. There is splitting the continuity and saying, well, I didn't have continuity, I still don't give up. I want to look at partially some type of continuity is also available. I'll hang on to it and analyze it. Now, if you have a continuous function on a closed interval, suppose f maps AB to R is continuous. Whenever I say continuous, it means at all points. Then we saw that it is bounded above, it is bounded below, it has an absolute maximum and it has an absolute minimum. Okay. Then f has an absolute max and an absolute. No, this is perhaps the earliest optimization theorem. If you have a continuous function, you have an, what do you call, universal optimum or whatever this is called, and global optimum, yes. Global optimum on either side, global max as well as it's global max and global min, not so earlier. Now, what is the corresponding situation for semi-continuous functions? Suppose I have f mapping AB to R. Lower semi-continuous. Okay? The corresponding version, how do they look? Suppose I have a lower semi-continuous function, then I don't know whether it will be bounded above, whether it will be bounded below. Nothing is now known. Whereas when I had a continuous function, everything was shown. And if it is bounded below, that means fx is greater than or equal to m for some m for all x. If it is bounded below, then it has an optimal min, global min. Then f has an absolute min. This is the sort of theorems that you will see in calculus of variations and other subjects, where you see you take certain functionals associated with the space of functions, and then you try to minimize that function. Now, of course, you'll be doing it in a metric space, but these results are all the same. Okay? If we have a compact set, replace the closed bounded interval by a compact set. If we have a semi-continuous function of a compact set which is bounded below, it will have an absolute min. Okay. This AB is only a simple role model for compact sets. And corresponding theorem for upper semi-continuous functions is if AB maps R is upper semi-continuous and bounded above, it has an absolute max. Now, of course, if f is continuous, it is both lower and upper, and it is automatically bounded, that also we have seen, and therefore it has an absolute max and absolute. So, therefore, that theorem, with all these theorems pieced together, is that continuity theorem. The root of it is these two simple theorems, where lower semi-continuity and bounded below, upper semi-continuity and bounded above, on a compact set, will always give you the corresponding maxes and mins. Even the famous Lax-Milgram theorem, which every PDE fellow will keep on putting, the first 10 pages of any book on theoretical book on finite elements will state Lax-Milgram theorem, and eventually it is this argument that will come into the picture. Okay? It's indirectly or directly, overtly or covertly, that's used. Okay, these were all problems of optimization. Now some topological questions. Okay. When we saw a continuous function, okay, again I recollect what we did for continuous function and ask what can you say about semi-continuous function. So suppose I had a continuous function. See, again here you can replace this by a metric space and then corresponding statements. And whenever I wrote an open interval, you can replace it by an open set. And closed interval, you can replace it by a compact set. Okay, these are all the things. Right. If f maps R to R is continuous, then many sets associated with f we looked at. Namely, we looked at all those points R that fx is less than alpha. All those, for every alpha, we looked at, I use some notation here, f was here, alpha was there. Alpha is above f, here alpha is greater than alpha. And what did I do for less than or equal to greater than or equal to? I don't know what notation I used. X belonging to R, such that fx less than or equal to alpha belonging to R, such that fx less than whatever notations I used. You remember what notations I used? No, doesn't matter. Let us call this as what? E alpha f. The endpoint is also included. This is less than alpha, this is less than or equal to alpha, this is greater than or equal to alpha. So f is here, f is below, alpha is above. Here is greater than or equal to f is there, alpha is there, close because that equality point also is used. Okay, this is the notation, these four sets. Now, we found that this was an open set for every alpha. Whatever alpha you choose, that will be an open set. This will be an open set. This will be a closed set. and this will be a closed set. Okay. For continuous functions. Now what can you say about any such statement can we make about semi-continuous? What about lower? We will make statements about lower semi-continuous, then what about LS? Now let's start with the semi-continuous. So let F this right, that as long as this right, be semi-continuous function. Okay. What does it mean to say that it's a semi-continuous function? Therefore, take any xi in R, then for every epsilon positive, it is a lower semi-continuous. Looking at lower semi, there exists a delta greater than 0 such that mod x minus xi, that if you stay in the neighborhood, then if you pull the curve up in the neighborhood, that point stays below. The value at that point stays below. This is the definition. Take any point. This will happen. Okay. Of course, this delta will depend on this epsilon and the point at which, again, you can talk uniformly semi-continuous with that way. You can choose it without depending on etc. Those are all further trivial instructions. But now, any questions?
So you could also give it as you take epsilon minus epsilon
Yes.
and then say that the curve is above epsilon minus epsilon.
Whichever way you look at it.
Right? No.
Whichever way you
That's
look
a
at it.
yes.
Instead of lowering that, you are talking relativity now. Okay? Instead of I am moving there, you come here. Both are same. Because it was written like this, I am looking at it as lifting the curve. Okay? You put my epsilon that side and say I am pulling the fz. That's pulling down the epsilon. Okay, so I have this at any point. Now, take any alpha in R and look at what did they call it? E alpha f bar, which is a set of all x such that fx is less than or equal to R. Consider this set. Suppose one of these sets I have chosen, namely this fellow. I know that this is a closed set when it was a continuous function. Now I will show that this is a closed set even if it's a lower semi-continuous function. Okay? We will show that EF alpha bar is closed. That's the first statement. Okay, let me just, therefore, what would we get? Suppose we show this. Therefore, F lower semi-continuous implies E alpha bar is a closed set. That's the first one we will get. I have not proved it, but that's my claim. Now, if we show that, we will also show closed set for every alpha. Also show that if that's a closed set for every alpha in R, then F must be a lower semi-continuous function. Therefore, we will get a theorem that F is lower semi-continuous if and only if is a closed set. Now this bar should not be treated as a closure of this. It is only a notation. Okay. But alpha is also included. Right. So therefore, that would simply mean its complement. What is its complement? This must be an open set. This is also automatically vacant. Then EF alpha complement, which is equal to EF alpha, is an open set. So those two will get from lower semi-continuity. Similarly, the other two will come from upper semi-continuity. Okay. Similarly, F is USC, if and only the other way around. What is that? E alpha F is the closed set for every alpha planet. Or if and only if its complement. Now because a continuous function is both, we get all those results. This is closed, that's open. One pair comes from, there are only two results. Okay, one of them is true, the complement is also true. So there are only two results there. One result comes from lower semi-continuity, the other result comes from upper semi-continuity. The continuous function being both, it comes for both of them. Just indicate a proof of this. Let's look at it and try. Let's look at the first part. Let's look at one. Okay. We are given F is take any alpha in R, we want to show that what is this set? Set of all x in R, that fx is less than equal to R. We want to show that that's a closed set. Now there are many ways of showing that something is a closed set. One way is to show that it contains all its limit points. Okay. So, this is the same thing as showing, to show that every limit point of EF alpha belongs to that set. Okay? That's what we want to show. So, alright, take limit point. Show that it is there. So take any point, xi, take any psi, r, which is a point of set. Now because this is first of all, I am going to use two facts. One, the function is lower semi-continuous and therefore it is lower semi-continuous at the point xi, and use the fact that xi is a limit point. First of all, f is lower semi-continuous at xi, therefore this is valid. So f is 1, A, we get f is lower semi-continuous at xi means for every epsilon positive there exists a delta positive such that mod x minus xi is less than delta implies fx per f xi is less than fx plus epsilon. Okay. Now, xi, the limit point, of means there exists a sequence such that xn tends to xi. If that's so, in any neighborhood of xi there will be a point of xn. Okay. So therefore, there exists an x belonging to EF alpha bar in mod x minus xi. In every neighborhood of xi, there must be at least one point of that fellow because he is a limit point. If there is nobody there, that means he has avoided all the fellows and he is no longer a limit point. So therefore, there exists an x in this neighborhood. But since he belongs to this neighborhood, he must satisfy that for this x, we have f xi is less than fx plus epsilon by 1 by a. Apply a to this particular x. Right? But where is fx? Where is x? X is in EF alpha bar. And therefore fx will be less than or equal to alpha. So this is less than or equal to alpha plus epsilon for because x belongs to. Therefore, f xi is less than or equal to alpha plus epsilon for every epsilon positive. For every epsilon positive, f xi has to be less than or equal to alpha, and therefore f xi must be less than or equal. It cannot go beyond alpha. What does it say? You take alpha. Suppose f xi goes here, right? Then I can choose an epsilon here. So this epsilon, so that alpha plus epsilon is here, and I would get f xi greater than alpha plus epsilon, which will be violating this. Because f xi is less than alpha plus epsilon, for all epsilon it has to be less than or equal to alpha. And that means xi belongs to, because any point, a point gets qualified to go here if the value is less than or equal. So therefore, we are done. Where was it? To show that every limit point belongs to. We started with any limit point and we showed that it belongs to the. Therefore, every limit point of EF alpha is in. Therefore, this EF alpha bar is a close. And therefore the other one, its complement is an outside. That proves one. Now, two. I will just indicate to you what is to be done. Two, suppose not. Suppose it is not lower semi-continuous. We want to prove, given this, what else is that? Given this, we want to prove that. So we are given this, we want to prove it is not lower semi. We want to prove it is lower semi-continuous. Suppose not, therefore f is not lower semi-continuous at some xi. Because if it is lower semi-continuous at every point in R, I am finished. So suppose it is not lower semi-continuous at some point. What is negation of lower semi-continuous? Lower semi-continuous means for every epsilon greater than 0 something happens. Negation means for some epsilon that will not happen. So let's write that. Therefore, there exists an epsilon positive such that something does not happen. What happened before? For every, there exists a delta. Now for every delta positive, but something happened before that will not happen. What happened before? F xi was less than fx plus epsilon. That's there. For every there exists an x in mod x minus xi less than delta. such that f psi is greater than or equal to fx plus epsilon. For every delta positive, this happens. Okay? Now, choose delta equal to 1 over n. Therefore, there exists a xn in mod x minus xi less than 1 over n, such that f xi is greater than or equal to fx plus fxn plus epsilon. So, what does that say? What can you say about fxn? Fxn is less than or equal to f psi minus epsilon. Right? I have taken this epsilon to this side and put this below that side and this below that side. That's all it means. Okay? Fxn is less than or equal to f psi minus epsilon. Now I will choose alpha to be this. Choose alpha to be equal to f psi minus epsilon. So you are given the point xi. So f psi is fixed. There exists an epsilon. That epsilon I choose and consider this number alpha. Now fxn, therefore xn belongs to E alpha f bar, because fxn is less than or equal to, and xi does not belong to, because f psi cannot be less than or equal to f psi minus epsilon. F psi is certainly greater than f psi. So xi does not belong to this. But xn converges to, because mod xn minus xi is less than 1 over n. As n tends to infinity, that goes to 0, so xn converges to xi. So what have we got? Xi is a limit point of E of alpha bar, but xi does not belong to E of alpha bar, implies E of alpha bar is not closed, because there is a limit point which does not belong to it. But then we started with our hypothesis that it is closed, so that's a contradiction. Because E of alpha bar is closed, given. Okay, therefore a contradiction, and therefore it must be lower semi-continuous. Okay, therefore the lower semi-continuity is captured by either the inverse image of this set alpha infinity minus infinity alpha, or by the other set alpha infinity. Okay. So it is either less than, the fact that less than or equal to alpha must be closed, or greater than alpha must be open, is what captures lower semi-continuity. Similarly, upper semi-continuity is captured by those two fellows. Okay. That's something minimum. I have said very minimal about semi-continuous functions. But these are important. If at any stage you really get into a very formal analysis of optimization theorems, these are all fundamental observations about semi-continuous functions which will some over the other be used and these fellows. Okay, I think it's the right time to stop. So we had continuity, points of discontinuity, and semi-continuity. So somehow or the other, there are interesting things in continuity, there are interesting things in semi-continuity, there are interesting things in discontinuity. And you get to the point to analyze how these things look like. When we go to differentiation, we will see somewhat similar way of splitting things. What do we say? Fx plus h minus fx divided by h must be less than epsilon. Now that can be split into two parts, and eventually we will see that the whole splitting can be done in 8 different parts. Okay, and 8 types of derivatives. They are called all the Dini derivatives. If all the 8 types of derivatives exist, and all are equal, then the function is differentiable at that point. Okay. So the derivative has 8 different pieces of information in it. Okay, the existence of the derivative has 8 different pieces of information. Now it turns out we take it for granted that okay, most functions are differentiable. We never say what do you mean by most functions. So it's a question of the size. Let's put the differentiable functions all in one box and the non-differentiable functions in the other box. Then what will happen is that you are not even allowing me this function. The step one. Okay, I will give you that also. Then Ampala said that dini derivative exists for me. The 7 of them did not exist, but at least one of them exists. Okay, take it also. Take all those functions for which at least one of those 8 pieces of information of derivative exists. Even then, it turns out that's a very small set topologically. The set of all functions for which at least one dini derivative exists is of first category. It can basically be manufactured by nowhere dense sets in the space of functions. So there is a very, we keep on begging, okay, I'll allow this, I will allow this. Even then, what it says is, in the space of functions in a sense, in the space of continuous, because if you want to have differentiability, you must have minimum continuity. In the space of continuous functions, these fellows who are somewhat differentiable are also very badly distributed. Most spaces, you are more likely to run into a non-differentiable function than a differentiable function. What we have been doing is cheating. Whenever we came across, we fudge it. We simply deal with only differentiable function. Even if it is not there, don't worry, integrate the delta function. Differentiate the delta function, take the Fourier transform, whatever it is. But all that is what do you mean by these things? So there is a lot of problem. So became the theory of distribution, where all these problems disappear. If you look at the class of distribution, then this problem of derivative does not exist at all. You can differentiate any number of times in the sense of distribution. So you change your concept of differentiation itself in a different context to take care of all these delta fellows and other fellows. You have a different collection of functions. You have a different notion of differentiability. And you say, look, there is no problem. I can differentiate any number of times. That's what I have been doing all these years. I have differentiated delta any number of times. But you didn't do it. You didn't know what you were doing. But we know now what we are doing. Okay. That's exactly the problem. The problem is, good things are very few in number. Okay. But we go in search of them. And when you find a bad fellow, find that good part in him. That 1/8 derivative that exists and work with it. And you are going to get something. If you go on worrying about the 7 non-existing derivatives, you are not going to get it. So you are very likely to hit a bad fellow. But then don't worry about his bad. See whether there is anything good in him. Work with it and try to make a progress. Okay? Don't waste your time looking at the bad parts. So there is a lot of these ideas are very, very important. You don't get stuck with something not working. This theorem does not apply, therefore I give up. Hell with that theorem. See whether that theorem was so necessary at all. So many extra unnecessary powerful hypotheses would have been put because the author could not proceed any further. Many things could have been done with a simpler hypothesis, lesser hypothesis, and so on and so forth. So, like the optimization, eventually just the lower semi-continuity you could have got. You need not absolute min with a little more throwaway continuity. You have lower semi-continuity, but with little estimate show it's bounded below, then you are guaranteed absolute min. Okay. So there are lots of very, very subtle things that are there in continuity and differentiability. And the beginning is the semi-continuity. And there is a lot of semi-continuous functions that are generated in measure theory and other places, and therefore probability theory and also in optimization. But I don't think I allow time to discuss all of them. It's a, see, we are still somewhere in 1900. Okay. It takes a long, long time. Because these are all very subtle, I can't point it. I can only say, I will only point out the directions in which these are being looked.
So we'll stop here.
So what